Everybody, thank you for coming back to a Fan of the Game basketball podcast. And yes, I repeat it all the time. I love this game. I have one of my great friends, Jeff, here on the pod today on the show because I feel like I need more people who know basketball better than me or are as passionate about it as I am. And who better than Jeff, since he's an avid March Madness watcher, college basketball savant mind. How you doing, Jeff?
Doing great, Alma, and likewise, a good friend uh, and very knowledgeable with basketball. And what a time of year to talk about basketball. I think this is the best time of the year personally, but I don't know how you feel. I've been a little giddy today. BYU just won, so I'm in good spirits. That's why I had to put the beach on in the black in the background there.
I think it's been a great day. I think I've been repeating it on blast for the last 3 weeks that this is college basketball time and it's almost NBA playoff time. So it's the best time for basketball. Um, for me, I never do great bracket wise, so my bracket went like wee and back down.
Usually I'm the same, but somehow in some way I'm actually having a very good day so far.
Yeah, we don't want to jinx it. We don't want to
I
jinx it.
know, I know. Usually I get my hopes high and then one team crumbles and falls for me very fast. So I'm just keeping my prayers in the right spot and hoping that we just keep on winning.
Speaking of the bracket, did you pick Creighton to win?
I did pick Creighton to win.
Oh, no way.
I did. Now, I do need to be fair. I'm one of those psychopaths that does more than one bracket. So, yes, collectively out of the many brackets I have done, I've had Creighton win most of them.
That's good.
I just feel like the Cardinals were a little overrated
Hmm.
personally, and I think Creighton just is experienced and but again, I like to think I knew it. I just I just thought they were gonna win at the end of the day. Blue Jays are cooler than Cardinals, I guess.
I
If
got you. I got you.
for all of our fans like that.
I uh I only had two brackets. I have a paper one. I don't know how that one's doing because it's like with the person who's like in charge of it, and then I have the normal.
Uh-huh.
And I was just trying to help my fellow Kentuckians out, and I was wrong. That was the first game. I was like, oh, my bracket is ruined.
I have to ask you, so you're a fan of Louisville over Kentucky, right? Or do
No,
you like both?
I would say, because I spent some time in Kentucky, and I think some people don't know this if they watch this, but I think I would
Mhm.
pick Kentucky over Louisville.
How do you feel your Wildcats are doing this year as a true blue blood fan?
I think the Wildcats are better. I mean, they lost their coach, in my opinion, but that's a historic franchise, in my opinion. And in one of my brackets, I gave them like an extra win, but in like my main bracket, I do think that the team that I selected is just a tad better.
I do believe they will win a March Madness game this year. They've had somewhat of a curse in recent years, and I don't believe this is their year to continue that curse, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. They're pretty talented from what I have seen.
Yeah. And then with me spending time in North Carolina, I remember this happens every time that I move. Like I would go to a new state and they'd say, "Hey, where are you from?" "Oh, I'm from Utah." So they'd be like, "Oh, so are you a Utes fan? Are you a Cougar fan?" I'm like, I have no idea." It's like, "Oh, then we can adopt you. So are you going to be Chapel Hill? Are you going to be a Duke? Are you going to be NC State?" And I couldn't like that was in a time where I was like not as involved in basketball, so I didn't know who to pick. But I knew that I didn't want to pick NC State.
Yeah, yeah, you kind of get like, which one is gonna avoid a fight in the street? That is one thing that's a lot easier about the NBA. It's just because it's such a global sport. Usually you can get away with liking a team, especially if you came from that state.
Right.
It's like, oh, I'm a Utah Jazz fan because I'm from Utah. No one's gonna try to punch you in the face because of that.
Yeah.
Or at least that's for me, even though the Jazz are not the team worth cheering for currently, but uh still sad. But I fortunately have never had to be in that predicament where you're picking between Duke and North Carolina, and then once you make your pick, you can't go to that city again.
Yeah.
Um,
That's why I'm very neutral. Very neutral. I am repping Kyrie today, and so there's
oh,
the Duke, but there's also a Chapel Hill right here. So
I love how you're repping three of probably the most highly decorated. Now, obviously, Kobe and MJ in terms of the accolades and the championships. But Kyrie, I think, is just one of the smoothest to play the game.
yeah.
He's just filthy. How are you feeling since the injury?
I was really upset when the injury happened. I will confirm that there were some tears shed when I found out because I saw the play, I was watching the game. I was like, it's done. We're done. He hits those Mamba shots, which I love, but then the next day
hmm
I have to wake up to injury news. And so I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm all right. As you know, I followed players first before I got into team basketball. So
Yeah,
I still got what is maybe three, four healthy players out still that I like and hopefully can make a run.
that is one perk of the NBA. You can kind of piggyback your hopes and dreams of something on an individual.
Yeah.
Where March Madness, once your team loses, it crushes all of your dreams, and you kind of lose all motivation to care
Yeah.
about your team from that point on. Uh, but today's not that day for me.
No, it's not.
Not that day
Not.
for me today.
You got two more
Uh,
days till the next game, right?
yes, yeah, we play Wisconsin, the Badgers on Saturday,
You
so
got to
that
be
will be a
honest.
tough matchup.
How far do you have BYU going?
I have them going to the Sweet 16 and
Okay.
losing to Alabama. I'm optimistic that they can have a good game Saturday. I think we match up well. Alabama scares me because you just don't know what team is going to show up. Uh, Teams like Kentucky that have played teams like Alabama a lot, they are lengthy, they score well, and they pace really well. That's what BYU is trying to do, and I wonder if we're apt to run with a team like Alabama. Uh, Wisconsin, to be honest, I haven't really watched play that much, so I kind of every time I don't know how you are, but every time I hear that a team from Wisconsin's really good at a sport, I kind of think, well, they're from Wisconsin. They're gonna eventually lose it, down the road. I know that didn't happen with Milwaukee when they won it with Giannis, but I am a full believer that Giannis did not win that championship. I believe Drew Holiday won that championship,
Mhm.
and he is the reason the Celtics won last year in
Mhm.
many ways.
Yeah.
But that's where I come in with my bold theories. So I'm kind of crazy like that.
I believe in your craziness. I think you should live up to your craziness.
That's why we're good friends, Alma. That's why we're good buddies.
I accept it. I accept it. As of right now, UCLA is beating Utah State as of recording this episode. Texas Tech is beating UNC Wilmington. Um, Michigan is beating San Diego.
Oof, that's
And
hard for me. I had San Diego was one of my sleeper teams. I had them winning the next two. So if they lose, that's an owie.
hopefully mine gets better. And I think, is there any other games right now? No, that's it right now. As of right now, as of recording this episode, I actually got my wife to do it for the first time, which is kind of fun.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
she randomized it, so she had no idea what she was doing. Even more, like you have those two camps where you have us that
Yep.
study every team, and then you
hmm
have the other side of it where they're just picking like the jersey colors and stuff like that.
Yep.
This was a different camp. I just pressed a random button.
Oh, that's hilarious. Do you feel like it's made her experience more fun, or is she just kind of like, like, oh, that whatever.
I think it's both. I think it's a hybrid. I think it's a hybrid.
Okay.
She's
Okay, you
watching
have to
right
let
now.
me know after a few days if she starts getting into.
Yeah, we'll get into it. We'll have that conversation. Does your wife get into it with you?
Yeah, she grew up in Tucson, Arizona. So being from Tucson, the UFA, the Wildcats, were obviously a really, really good basketball team. And she played basketball in high school a little bit. So this is actually one of the funnest parts of the year for us because we both take brackets super seriously, and we're hoping to kind of make, this an ongoing thing for down the road. And I love it just because one team can show up and start making some crazy shots. And for example, like McNeese State today just walloped Clemson. And I know it ended up being a 2-point victory, but for those who actually watched the game, it was pretty embarrassing if you're a Clemson fan. Um, and again, that's what makes it fun is some team just shows up and plays slightly better, and hopes and dreams kind of rise and someone else's kind of crumble. And that's why I kind of love it. It's kind of maddening in a way. And
Yeah.
that's why they call it March Madness.
I'm glad that I get to share this time with my kids too, and they don't understand it completely yet, but they're going, "Yay, they scored!" Or they go, "Oh," so it's been kind of fun.
I do have to ask you, you're obviously a massive fan and you rep the jerseys, you got your players and your guys. Do you feel like your kids are picking up on some of them?
I think they're picking up on it. They recognize LeBron, which is a feat.
Right?
They recognize Kobe. They're getting to recognize Michael, which is good.
Hmm.
Um, but they haven't recognized a lot of different players or teams yet. But at least they got LeBron and Mike and Kobe in
They
there.
they got some of the key ones, and that
Yeah,
that that's good.
yeah,
That means you're doing your job well.
yeah. I kept asking them earlier today, like, "Hey, who are you gonna play for? Who are you gonna play for?" And my son just goes, "Basketball."
Hey, you know what? Technically, it's not the wrong answer.
Correct, correct. Good answer. Yes. Well, hopefully you will play basketball. So, before we transition into some like NBA basketball talk, because I have a topic that I want to discuss with you.
Yeah.
Um, you know how they have like the game Pick Five, Cut Five?
Yeah.
So I have a similar game where they do that one in high school where if you're like an old person like me, they had like the kiss, marry, kill. So
Yep.
I
Uh-huh.
have who do you get drafted by? Who do you win a championship with? Who do you get traded with? And where do you end your career with?
Oh man. That's a crazy one. Um, well, and again, let me set the present here. And it has to be a different team every time, right?
Different team every time. That's right now is the only criteria. You kind of can make your case for why you're picking each team. But right now it's just
Yeah.
you have to pick a different team for each one.
The team I would want to be drafted by, I'm a point guard at heart. So I grew up playing point guard and 5'10", mildly athletic. I can shoot decently. So clearly I'm not going to rebound the ball. I would want to go to a team that has really good guard play. Now, deep down, I don't like the guy, but he is probably the most crisp and clean point guard in the game. So I would like to get drafted by the Spurs and be mentored by Greg Popovich and Chris Paul and become a better player because of working with the both of them. Greg has got obviously a culture of winning and has obviously a huge history of developing players to become elite, aka the Claw would never exist if it wasn't for Greg Popovich. And I believe that he single-handedly did that. We could talk about the Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, um, clearly Tim Duncan stage where that team ran the league for a handful of years and they were just so crisp, and I think that would be a great place to get mentored. Um, Now it's a traded or then championship.
So it's drafted, who you win a championship with, who you get traded.
Okay. Um, I think winning the championship with it'd be really cool to go to an organization that's never won. And win a championship for them. Kind of, LeBron did that for Cleveland. Whether you hate LeBron or love him, ultimately you gotta think it's so cool that he went and did that for Cleveland, pulling the 4-3. uh, kind of like the comeback king in a lot of ways. So obviously for me being a Utah fan, I would love to bring a chip home. But technically I would want to retire here because that's always just been my team. So I'm thinking of other organizations that have never won a championship. I think it'd be really cool to do it for like the Kings or something like that, a team that in fact, one of the only games I was going to for an away game was the Sacramento Kings. Their fans are super passionate, but the game got canceled due to some protests. But I got to sit there and kind of interact with the fans, and they were really cool. So I think the Kings would be a fun organization to win a championship with. Deep down, I would love for Seattle to get us a team back or Portland. One of the West Coast teams. I feel like the East Coast has got plenty of rings. They'll be just fine. I feel like the West Coast needs some more representation there. So I would probably pick one of them. I'll stick with Portland for right now. Just so I'll give it Portland or Sacramento. Um, and if I had to be traded to a team, I would probably want to go to a team that would have a clear identity for me, as like a point guard, and I could really develop with, just for like the aura of the NBA. When you think of like the best places to play, um, Boston is one that comes to mind. When I think of like the basketball court you play on, I think right away to Boston and being able to play in the city and have that experience. I also think it would be really cool to, frankly, go somewhere that has no taxes. So any of the 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 teams down in Texas, you can make a lot of money. Not to get businessy about it. Um, I actually really like Mark Cuban. It's just like he's kind of a cool mentor for me in the business world, and I think it'd be cool to be traded somewhere where you could have that kind of relationship
Mhm.
outside of basketball. And then lastly, I would like to retire with the Utah Jazz and bring them a championship as well. So, um, I'm gonna, I'll leave it there. Just out of curiosity, what are yours?
So like you had a I didn't think about this because you kind of took it with current, which is kind of cool. Um, but I like your take about having a good system to start with, like having a good coach and having a good mentor. I didn't think about that when I had my pick. So like currently, I'm not sure if I would want to be coached or mentored by anyone on this team. So for me, like my comes from my passion for the sport and my nostalgia. Because I think of it as it's a privilege to play in the NBA. Like you have to,
Hmm.
it's a 15-man roster, and I know there's the conversations with like the nepotism and the how big your pocketbook is, name brand recognition. I get all that. But
Yeah,
like this, but beyond that, I have this like family feeling or how you feel connected to a team type thing. That's why I love Giannis's story so much because
yeah,
he comes from nothing to something and he's, what you can do with the other side of basketball, which is the business side of basketball about staying loyal, the money, all that type of stuff. So when I made my pick, just so you know, I did not think about having a mentor or coach in mind. I took it very like family oriented. So I would say I would want to be drafted by the Knicks
hmm.
because when my folks arrived into the United States, they ended up in New York. So it's
Oh,
like
that's cool.
there's a piece of me in New York. Uh,
Yeah.
because I've had a relationship with this franchise for a long time because I have a lot of memories. Um,
Hmm.
I would want to win another championship with Dallas. Hopefully
Oh,
nothing
yeah.
weird happens. I that team is struggling and they've had a horrible year. I agree with
Dark times in Dallas.
dark times. I agree with a lot of the sentiment that's going on there, but I think, which is something we'll talk about in a bit, I think the key is you got to win. And so if you bring that type of Celtics Lakers feeling back, you got to win. You got to put banners up. So
Right.
I'd like to win a championship with Dallas. Um, the team I'd get traded to is the Chicago Bulls.
Oh, classic.
My first exposure to basketball was Space Jam, Michael Jordan. I can clearly remember that as a kid, watching that, wanting to be like Mike, and watching like Mike and tying up my
Oh, that's
shoes,
cool. Yeah.
pretending to be like Mike. And I think Billy Donovan's the coach right now.
Hmm.
I'd like to be kind of like that Bill Russell coach player, where if
Hmm.
I got traded, I could help mentor and then be alongside a good coach.
Yeah.
And even though I'm not a fan, but it's been home for a long time, I would retire with the Jazz.
I gotta say, I think that's cool because it's like part of you in a way.
Yeah.
Makes my reasoning for wanting to be traded to a Texas team for financial reasons seem a little more worse. But you know what? I'll keep that in the back of my pocket.
Well, you have the
Um,
beach behind you. I think anybody would want to go to Florida,
the
play for
dream
Eric
big,
Spoelstra.
right? Hey, and no taxes either down there. They living pretty good down in Orlando. Um, and I didn't even think of Chicago, to be honest. I was thinking so current. Because like clearly nostalgic wise, like everybody wants to have a Michael jersey or a pair of Jordans, and it would be cool to kind of be a part of that in a way too. And by the way, I think Giannis is so awesome in a lot of ways. He's currently one of my favorites. It's just unfortunate that I think the Bucks have made so many weird decisions that it's kind of made post championship Bucks such a unique team. Uh, but could be worse, like Dallas,
Like
and
like that.
I know that's a soft spot for you, so we won't. I won't try to hurt your feelings yet.
That's okay. Like I was messing around and people can call it a bandwagon thing, but like remember, I grew up liking players and following players. So like
Right,
this is one of my favorite players. He plays for the Bucks right now. I root for the Bucks. But if he gets traded, guess what team I'm gonna have to like? At least like.
right. It's true, and I'm guessing that's why you like the Lakers because you got Kobe, you got LeBron, and I hope Giannis is a forever Buck. I think he
Yeah.
deserves to be one.
Yeah.
Like I think Luca should have been a forever Maverick. I think he deserved to be one. Um, it is unfortunate,
Yeah.
but so
The
weird.
business side of basketball, man. And maybe this is what's gonna help me understand. This is why I need Jeff, guys, just so you know. Um, being a fan of the game, you want to vent, you want to exercise your feelings about the sport. So, with the show, I've interacted with different like basketball groups, and um, I won't like mention teams or names just to kind of keep it like in a neutral type of generic situation here. But essentially, like this team that I was talking about was losing games. And I said a comment like, hey, keep your heads up. Really thought we're going to win this game. Everything's going to be fine. But the comments that I received in my reply were like, we don't want to win. This season's over.
Yeah,
Let's get a good draft pick in the team. And so I talked with a sibling of mine about it. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, why would you want to lose if the whole point is to win? Right. And I've been trying to think about
right.
like winning franchises. And throughout time, and if you go back into like NBA history, you could really go back because I think everything changed post, not everything, like the business side of basketball, I think still existed. But
Hmm.
post 80s, because that time period, it was very much Celtics, Lakers, Sixers. That's what it was.
Right.
Then you get into the Bad Boy Piston era, of course, the Michael era. You get some Houston in there. But if you look at the teams, right, and you look at the runner-up, you have to assume that this is the best team and the second best team, meaning like
Hmm.
who wins and loses. And there's a lot of teams on here that either with the merger or whatever it is, have never gotten really far, right? So you wanting a certain team to go pretty far is great for history. That's why I've enjoyed the last 4 years of basketball because there's been someone different every time, right?
Agreed. I would agree to that. Yeah.
But why would you, this is my question. This is the question I'm going to pose. Why would you sacrifice winning in favor of tanking?
I am, and this is such a good question. I think, and the NBA is super weird about this in so many ways. I'm a believer more in a culture internally than maybe your entire roster. Um, and I just think of like some of the current teams, right? Like if you think of the Golden State Warriors, I don't really ever recall them tanking to win championships. They brought in a great coach and Steve Kerr with a winning mentality because clearly he played with Michael and he had, Phil Jackson as his mentor. And, Golden State was super smart in how they drafted. Sometimes there's a bit of luck. I don't think people expected Giannis to be Giannis or Jokic to be Jokic. Sometimes those unicorns just pop out and are amazingly talented. That's why I'm such a big fan of Denver, by the way, because I think they just have done a beautiful job of orchestrating their team. Um, and like there are generational players, right?
You have
Clearly,
to have them. You
Cleveland,
have to have them.
right? Like clearly, Cleveland would never be Cleveland without LeBron. Now, to this day, I still believe if LeBron ever played for Cleveland, that organization would not have championships. That organization would be technically like the Washington Wizards of now. Nobody cares. Um, if you care about them, I'm sorry. I'm just here. I'm a Utah guy. Don't really care about it. Um, so clearly as a Jazz fan, I'm a little frustrated. I've kind of been, and I think back to just recent years, like when we had Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, Joe Ingles. You can even just look on like the business side. You to go to a Jazz game was super expensive, and uh, tickets were through the roof. Stadium was sold out, and like the other day, I got like a ticket offer where I could buy two separate game tickets plus like a free meal. It was Upper Bowl, and like the price for both of them were like $40. And I was baffled. I'm like, dang, it's gone really bad. And I just it confuses me why an organization would be willing to tank or lose games to one, negatively impact the fans, right? Like I believe, for example, I hate to hit it on a soft spot. I struggle with the Mavericks move because they still had a window of opportunity with Luca. And I understand where maybe you didn't want to pay him a full max, but like, why do you not write it out for the rest of this year? Or why do you, abandon hope and try to work out something where he's clearly a generational player? You're not going to just get a Luca on your doorstep. And because frankly, I've seen so many draft picks where they're drafted first or second, third, and they don't really pan out either. Um, Now, don't get me wrong. If I could be biting myself saying these things 10 years from now because maybe the Jazz get a generational guy and they finally win a championship and create like a dynasty of some sort. But I've seen so many organizations that have not done it that way, where they have just put in the right pieces. The Warriors being probably the best example in my mind, with free agency and getting really, really good draft picks of winning culture players. And frankly, I feel like the Jazz have a lot of talented people on the team that could win you games. I don't think they're a playoff team by any means. And I think the only reason why I would comprehend tanking is if you're not going to be making it to the playoffs, why would you keep running with the roster that you have when you can just ultimately restart and start fresh? And that's where I struggle. I'm just kind of like, I like winning. And frankly, I would rather have a culture where winning is what we want rather than a culture where we want you to lose so we can get the next best guy. Um, but when you're a small market team like the Jazz, sometimes that's your best strategy. And I failed. I can't comprehend it fully, especially from a business perspective, just because you're losing money during that season. So you're obviously doing a long-term, super risky move, and maybe it pans out and maybe it doesn't. Um, I think the 76ers were great when they said trust the process. And I don't necessarily love Joel Embiid, but I don't think he's a generational player in my opinion. Uh, Still haven't won any championships. So to me, I think there's more than just having a generational player if your championship dreams are what you want. So I don't know. I've talked for a minute and there's really no concrete answer to that, but I was curious what you thought about this too.
Yeah, I really appreciate you talking about culture because, like, for example, and by any means am I a Celtics fan, but I respect the Celtics. You know, they use a
Hmm.
different word down in Los Angeles. But like I know that it takes time to win, right?
Hmm.
And I know that between 2010 and let's say what, maybe 2020,
Hmm.
like a decade of not being a bad team, but I don't ever remember the Celtics being a bad team,
Hmm.
right? I don't ever remember the Celtics being the low of the low,
No.
right? And I also think that they built the right way. They drafted well.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, you have to trade, which is a part of the business of basketball. I don't think anybody wanted the big three of the Celtics to split up.
No.
But look at what Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are doing for the Celtics.
Right.
And I know human beings, we don't like to lose, right? It's that competition, that fight for life, that type of situation. So for me, I have a really hard time with it because I value at least a culture where we need to win games. Like as
Hmm.
small as high school, where you're like going to the high school games, whether you're in the band, where you're part of the cheerleading team, whether you're on the team, whether you're the fans, you have this pride for your team.
Hmm.
Like if you win games, there's more opportunities to engage with the team, and there's more opportunities to be etched in history. Now,
Right.
I have an ongoing conversation with a lot of my siblings about being remembered and what that really means. Like
Yeah.
if you never made it on that list of most likely to blank, that's not going to like change your history, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think if you think about it in like the family nucleus, hopefully you made an impact that your kids are going to remember you, that your grandkids are going to remember you, et cetera, et cetera. So I know there's winning in different ways, but when it comes to sports specifically, how you etch your name in history is by winning.
Right.
Like, I know recently Carmelo Anthony got some slack because he said that he would prefer to have an Olympic gold medal than an NBA championship. And I can
Huh.
understand why you could get some slack for that because it's an
Yeah.
NBA championship. But Carmelo's name is going to be etched in time because he also won an Olympic gold medal. He's also part of the Hall of Fame,
Right.
you know? So for me, that's where I had a hard time with this conversation that I was having on the social media stuff. And of course, social media is just social media, but it
Right.
doesn't mean anything. But I don't know how you sacrifice that. But and then people can make really good arguments for business side of things. You know, maybe the Jazz will get Cooper Flag. Maybe Cooper Flag is the generational player. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's an Andrew Bynum, which by no means is Cooper Flag and Andrew Bynum.
Oh, Bynum.
But those were I really just wanted to hear your thoughts and to see where a lot of people are at in this type of conversation. Because I know that sometimes on the business side of things, you have to do certain things. And I think in certain ways, the Bucks and the Jazz were kind of in that similar spot. And then I think Giannis got picked 18. I'm probably
Hmm.
between 18 and 20 something.
Yeah.
Um, and look at him now, right?
Right. And
But
my hope, and I think I see why people are optimistic about it because it's the only thing you can be optimistic about when your team sucks.
right.
Like, oh, like it's my hope, there could be a light at the end of the tunnel. And I totally agree with you. I think when you think of like some of the best to ever play, whatever sport it is, right? Like when you think of tennis, who do you think of? You think of Serena Williams, you think of Roger Federer, you think of the champions.
Right.
You could tell me some other crazy statistic about some guy. If he's never won, I will never remember his name. Uh, Same with football. There's a handful of players who I think were maybe more talented than the winners, but at the end of the day, people are attracted to winning. And I know for me personally, I follow those who win. For example, being a Jazz fan, I used to hate Kobe Bryant. I hated Kobe Bryant. I demised the guy because he was a Jazz killer. But now I've grown to totally love and respect the guy because talk about like just a dog and a winner, right? And it's funny for me how like my life has changed that way. Um, because now that I'm older and I've come to respect the sport more, it's made me grow to like people like Kobe more. Um, which is just so interesting. So it's an interesting conversation, and that is why I am not a GM of a team.
I don't know if I want that job.
No, maybe if I was uber rich after I'm living in Texas playing for my NBA team
This is
with
true.
no taxes.
Are you sure you didn't buy the Celtics recently for $6.1 billion? dollars?
That doesn't ring a bell. Let me check my bank account.
Well, Jeff, it's been a pleasure talking with you about this game that we love. I usually leave the show with a quote to end our time here. Thank you, Jeff, for being with us. Really
Of
appreciate
course.
you.
Thanks for the invite.
Bill Russell said, create unselfishness as the most important team attribute.
That's a good one.
Talk to y'all later.
See ya.